Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Camille's Cozy Chronicles. I'm Camille and today we are going to be talking about the books that I read in January. The way this video is going to go, I have organized my books into 3 categories. The first category is physical books that I own, the second category is books that I read on my Kindle, and the third category is audiobooks. I think we have about 18 books to get started today, and those all range from fantasy to YA to historical fiction to clean fiction. So without further ado, let's just jump into the video. So the first books we're going to be talking about today are the Out of Time series by Nadine Brandes. My wonderful husband gave me a copy of the special edition hardcovers that Enclave Publishing put out this winter for Christmas, and I was so excited. I've never read this series before, but they've been on my want to read list for a long time. So these were actually some of the first books that I read in January. So the first book is A Time to Die, and then the second book is A Time to Speak, and then the third book is A Time to Rise. I rated all of these 5 stars. This was the most impactful YA fantasy, actually it's not fantasy, it's dystopian series that I read in like a really long time. And I was really just blown away by how moving this series was. This book is about Parvin Blackwater, and she lives in a dystopian America where the country of America is split into 2, and there's a big wall like that divides it like pretty much like in half. Their society runs off of clocks, which means that when every person is born, they are assigned a clock that tells them exactly how many years, days, minutes, and seconds they have left to live. And Parvin only has 1 year left. She wants to do something important in the last year of her life, obviously, but the catch is she shares this clock with her twin brother, which means they don't know which clock is the other person's. People discover that she's been sharing this clock with her brother, and she ends up getting found out, and she gets cast out across the wall, which is pretty much the death sentence for people on her side of the wall because they don't know what's on the other side. The whole series is about her trying to survive and learning the purpose for her life, trying to discover her faith in God and how to discover His will for her life. The central theme in these books is shalom. She finds this word in a journal that her brother had written, and it becomes pretty much like her life's goal to bring shalom. God is calling her to bring shalom to the world. I was not expecting this book series to be so impactful. I've never read it. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it, but I definitely did not expect the weight and heaviness and the focus on God to be so front and center. And it wasn't preachy, it was beautiful. I wanted to devour these books. There were times where I couldn't put it down, and times that I just had to because it was so weighty and I just needed to think about what was going on and what was happening to Parvin and her spiritual journey and her emotional and physical journey. I definitely cried at the end of this book. I may or may not have cried in the other 2. I don't really remember, but it was so good. I wish that I would have read these sooner, but I'm also glad that I didn't because it really helped me to see somebody else in a book struggling with their purpose in life and what God is calling them to do. So it was really inspiring. I can't really say anything else about the other 2 books in this series because they're very interconnected and it would be major spoilers. If you guys pick up any books out of this video, I would ask you to pick these ones up because I promise that you won't regret it. Moving on to the next book I read in January, I read Daughters of the Northern Shores by Joanne Bischoff. And this is the second book in the, what is this series? I think it's like the Blackbird Mountain series. It's the second book, and I think it's the only book because these are pretty old. I read the first book like in 2023, I think, and I really liked it, and I don't know why I never picked up the second one. It sat on my TBR cart and my TBR shelf for a very long time, and the only reason I ended up picking it up was because I drew it out of my wrapped TBR back here. But I am so glad that I did. This story is so beautiful. I can't really talk too much about the actual plot because it carries on events that happen in the first book, and I don't want to spoil those for you. It's about three brothers and their families. Their families are from Norway. This is just has a really sweet message of redemption and forgiveness. I'm trying to figure out how I can talk about this book without spoiling it. It has a really good message about reconciliation and just love between brothers and families, and also romantic love. There's just a lot going on in this book. I teared up at the end of this book because it was just so poignant and beautiful, and I just loved it so, so, so much. This was a 5-star read for me. It was just very sweet and wholesome and full of faith content that was just beautifully showcased. Joanne Bishop, her books are always beautiful with their faith content. They're always beautiful. The next book that I read in January, the next book in this category is Isaiah's Daughter by Miss Sue Andrews. This book is about a young woman who Isaiah the prophet adopts into his family. There's a lot of backstory about that, but that's the basics. Her name is Hepzibah. As you may recognize, Hepzibah is King Hezekiah's wife. And basically, they know each other from childhood. They grow up together, they learn together, they go to school together. In this book, Isaiah is the teacher of the royal children, and we go through all of the reign of King Ahaz, which is quite disturbing. It can be. So Hepzibah and Hezekiah have to navigate that together, and then they also have to navigate the beginning of Hezekiah's reign as king as well. I really loved the faith in this book. Obviously, it's biblical fiction. It was very good, and I always love biblical fiction because it makes me want to go back to the Bible and read what actually happened. And sometimes I learn new things. Wow, that actually did happen, and I didn't know that. There was a lot of spiritual content from Isaiah's prophecies that made me think and wonder. One thing that was brought up was that Isaiah wonders if Hezekiah is the promised Messiah. And I never thought about that before, but it just made me realize how desperately the Jewish people wanted the Messiah to come, and how they would have seen him in everyone. And like King Hezekiah, like David and Solomon and so many other kings that came. It was just really cool to think about that. So that was a really good book. I gave this book 5 stars. The one content note I want to make is there as an attempted depiction of rape, but is not graphic, and it doesn't actually happen. So it's very short and quick, but it is discussed, and there is other consequences of that discussed with another character becoming pregnant from being raped when she was younger. So there is that, but it's discussed very tactfully and handled very respectfully and not graphic at all. The last 2 books I'm going to talk about together, and that is Legendary by Stephanie Garber and Finale by Stephanie Garber. I read Caraval. I think I read Caraval, which is the first book in the Caraval series. I read it before Christmas, and I really liked it. It was really good. I don't read a ton of secular fiction for a couple reasons, but because mostly I get kind of sad at the end because it just feels very hollow, because there's nothing to like look forward to, with the faith and the romance of a true like godly relationship. So that is kind of hard. That's why I kind of don't read a ton of secular fiction, because it's kind of sad for me to read that. But I read Caraval. I really enjoyed it. The romance was it wasn't inappropriate. It's definitely closed door, and I don't think anything happens between Scarlett and Julian in the first book. I don't think it is. But I just have to say, the plots in these books, I can never figure out what's going to happen, which is kind of cool, but it's also really, really stressful. And I'm just like, I need to know what happens. And I just can't handle it. So this book, instead of being about Scarlett like Caraval was, this book is about Donatella, Scarlett's younger sister, which I was already kind of like, meh. I didn't really like her in Caraval, and I was like, she just kind of annoyed me, and I didn't really want to read it. So I was already a little bit hesitant to pick up this book, and honestly, it took me a long time to like get into it. I probably got like this far in before I was like, okay, now I just need to know what happens. But there was a couple of things that I had problems with this book. I rated both of these books 4 stars on Goodreads. I would probably rate them more like 3.5 stars if I could give half stars, just because there was some content that I wasn't a fan of. In this book, they're called like decks of destiny, and they're kind of like fortune-telling cards. And it was a little bit strange to me. I didn't really care for it. It plays a lot into this book, though, and after I read this book, I understood it a lot better, and it wasn't as sketchy, but I still didn't really care for it. The other thing I didn't really care for in this book was he's like one of the main characters. Is he in this book? Yes. Yeah. And he was a very more he's pretty much like the villain, except for there's like in this series there's like more than one villain, and I'm not really a fan of that, but he's like one of like the villains. I would say he's a villain. Maybe some people would say he's morally gray. If you read this series, you probably know what I'm talking about. He was creepy. I did not like him, which obviously is probably the point, and I don't really know how to feel about him. I know there's a spin-off series in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series is about him, and that's kind of why I haven't started reading it yet, because I didn't really like him and he kind of freaked me out, and I just don't really know if I should read a book about 3 books about him because he's sketchy. But so I haven't decided if I'm going to read that series. The other thing with this book is the first chapter, Donatella wakes up next to another man. And it's explained that all they did, they were drunk and they just were kissing and then they fell asleep because they were drunk, which I don't appreciate anyways. But regardless, that was kind of off-putting as well. I was like, I don't really like her very much. I definitely prefer Scarlett and Julian. They're just way better in my opinion. But I also really love the love story in this book. I really like Dante. I do. I really do. He's pretty great. He's not better than Julian, but he's pretty great. But he's also really frustrating because he's very morally gray as well. If you read this series, you know what I mean. I'm trying not to give spoilers. It was a good book. I really liked it. I really couldn't figure out what was going to happen next, and I wanted to know. I wouldn't say that I definitely don't agree with a lot of the stuff in this book. But I also had to kind of suspend belief and be like, okay, this is secular fiction. You cannot expect Christian fiction level quality from a secular author. There wasn't anything inappropriate. There were a couple kisses, and you probably could describe them as like handsy and a little more description than is probably going to be in a Christian fiction book. But it never went past kissing. So the same with this book. This book I liked a lot more than Legendary. Legendary was like, okay, this book was like, okay, give me all the answers. I need to know what's happening right now. The villain in this book is absolutely terrifying. But the romance in this book it's so good and it's so sad all at once. Again, with the morally gray / villain character in this book, he's worse than this one. I can't stand him. He's terrible. I just can't. And then this one, there's also more of there's a lot of longing for the other person in the romance. This is also Donatella and her love interest, who I can't say. And then but there is chapters with Scarlett and Julian, which redeemed this book a lot, because if it was just purely Donatella's perspective, I couldn't have read it. I don't know if I would have finished it if I didn't have those Scarlett and Julian tidbits in there. I definitely like this one a lot better, though. There was a lot of twists and turns, and it was really, really interesting. And I probably would reread this series again just because I need to start at the beginning and be like, okay, I need to see how all this lays out. Now that I know what happens, I just need to see how it all like lays out at the end. There was a lot of plot twists in this book that I didn't really expect. It was really crazy. I'm trying to remember more about it. I remember that I just really wanted to know what happened. And there's definitely like the content with the descriptive kissing, and it got a little handsy in a couple spaces. And there was at one point where they almost slept together. It didn't have any like lead up to it, but they really wanted to. And then one of the main characters was like, no, I can't, like, you deserve better. And I was like, thank you for not putting me through that, even though I knew it would have been closed door because this is YA. I was just like, thank you, that, because if that would have happened and they would have gone through with that, my rating would have gone down significantly. So that is Legendary and Finale by Stephanie Garber. Both, I would say, I gave them 4 stars on Goodreads. I would say they both would probably have more 3.5 stars though, just because I prefer Christian fiction, although I really love the characters in the storyline, although Donatella is very annoying. I really can't. She's really annoying. And there is some cursing and profanity in this. They take the Lord's name in vain, probably the most out of it. That was the other thing that I kind of had a problem with. I really didn't appreciate. I was like, seriously? That wasn't necessary? And this is a YA book, but I know that YA books have a lot different standards than a lot of us think they should. So that was these 2 books. And then the next books we're going to talk about are the books I read on my Kindle. Hello, editing Camille. I just wanted to pop in here and tell you guys that when I was going over this section, it's like a 2-minute section, and my microphone was like making like these weird popping and like sounds and like staticky sounds, and it was really annoying. And I don't know why, but it lasts for like 2 minutes, so I'm sorry. And if that annoys you, I'm really sorry. I did not know that had happened until I was in here editing and everything. So the first 2 books that I'm just going to briefly mention are Mistaking the Cowboy and Protected by the Cowboy by Mandy Blake. Both of these are available on Kindle Unlimited. I gave both of these books 5 stars. I have really been enjoying reading through the Blackwater Ranch series by Mandy Blake. These are books 3 and 4 in the series, I believe. And they're just really fun, lighthearted romances with really good faith content and like strong characters. I really loved Protected by the Cowboy specifically because he was obviously protecting her. And he was just very not sure. He was very intentional about their relationship and setting boundaries and making sure he was respecting her. And I really appreciated that. I really appreciate that in fiction when the characters do that. And then the next book that I'm going to talk about, I don't really want to talk about, but we're going to talk about it, is Daughter of the Sun by Amanda Aller. I gave this book 3 stars. But in my review that I wrote, I gave it 3.5 stars. And I was I think the right word is I was very confused by this book. I was really excited to read it because I've followed the author for a while, been keeping an eye on her page. The reels she makes for these series is really cool and intriguing, and I was like, this is going to be so good. I've read reviews, and all the reviews are like, this is amazing. Like, it's building up and building up and building up. And I got to the end of this book, and I was just like, I don't really see the hype, and I'm very confused. It held my attention for sure because I definitely wanted to know what happened, especially with Soliana and her arc and storyline and POV and the characters in her storyline and her sister and everything that was going on with her and happening with her. I can't say that because it's a spoiler, but my attention was held. I was interested. I was intrigued. And then it would switch to Paula's POV, and I was like, why? I didn't like her. So like the first, like it was like every other chapter switched, and every time it switched to her chapter, I hated it. And so it's like half the book I was like not appreciating the character because her POV made me anxious. They were messing with stuff they shouldn't be messing with. And she was a very angry person, and that was really disheartening to read. Also, the magic systems was really confusing, and the layout of the world, and like I was really like confusing. I went back and referenced the map at the beginning of this book so many times because I was just genuinely like so confused. I was like, where are they? I thought they were here, but now it looks like they're here, and I'm just confused as to how this is working. And until I got to the end and realized, oh, that's why I was very thrown off by that. I do want to know what happens, so I'm definitely going to read the next one, but I haven't been in the mood to pick it up yet. And I think, honestly, I need to also reread this book now that I kind of have read it once and I'm not like super confused by it. Maybe I'll reread it after I read the second one. I don't know. We'll see. There was one note. There was a few curse words. I think there was the D word and perhaps even the B word, I think. And then there was this made up like fantasy curse word that they kept using, especially specifically in Paula's POV, that I was just like, I had enough of it. I was over it. She kept saying it and other characters kept saying it, and I was so sick of hearing it. Halfway through the book, I was like, can you not think of a different word? It was really frustrating. I am a little bit sad that it was such a low rating because I was definitely looking forward to it and anticipating it to be a higher rating, but who knows, that might change like the next time I read it. Or maybe the second book will be better, which sometimes happens. The next book is Betraying Korth by Mary Meekum. This book is about she's not a girl, but a young woman who lives in this country where the king and the princess are very oppressive to her people, and the people are pretty much slaves. And so she decides that while the princess is on a voyage to go marry her betrothed and from another island kingdom, she's the princess's handmaiden. So she is going to stage a mutiny with all these other people from her underground resistance, this group of people, and she's going to stage a mutiny and pose as the princess to get the prince of this other country, Korth, to send aid to her people under the guise of sending aid to the king who is being attacked while her father poses as the king. It was really good. I really liked it. It is a retelling of The Little Goose Girl, which I can't say that I've ever read before or ever even heard of, but I really liked it. I really liked Korth. He was my favorite character. He is the prince who she is betrothed to, and he was just really, he's very by the book, and he's like, these are the rules. You have to follow the rules. Don't break the rules, kind of thing. And she's a rebel, so she's like, rules? Why rules? Why do you need rules? She has this prejudice towards him at first because she thinks that all people are treated the same way that the royalty from her kingdom treat her. So it was really interesting to see her go from all royal people are evil to, oh, it's just the place where I come from that is evil. Their romance was really cute because, of course, she starts falling in love with him. She's supposed to marry him and charm him. And there was several times that I laughed. It was really funny. The end is really funny too. There's this one specific scene that just made me giggle. It was hilarious. That was 5 stars. The next book we're going to talk about is a tiny little novella. It's called Steal a Sword Maiden's Heart by Tara Grace. It is 0.5 in the Court of Midsummer Mayhem series. It's about the king. I think he's like the king. He's not, yeah, he is the king of the court of knowledge. I think his name is Theseus, which I'm just now realizing this is a retelling of the Minotaur, kind of, because there's a labyrinth, and then there was a girl named Ariadne, I think, and then there was the yarn and the labyrinth. I'm just putting that together. Okay, so his name is Theseus, and there is monsters coming through the Fey realm. From the monster realm to the Fey realm, the divider is wearing really thin, and so monsters are getting in. And the Court of Knowledge is not a court of warriors, and so they need warriors to help protect their knowledge, because it's the knowledge of like the whole Fey realm. They have this whole like magical library that holds all the knowledge from all the realms of the Fey. And so he needs somebody to help protect his court. And he doesn't really have anything to offer for bargains. The only thing he really has to offer is himself in marriage to the Queen of the Shield Maidens. They live on their own island that does not allow men. I don't remember why, because they're all shield maidens and like no men can live on their island. So he goes to this island and he says, I am here to win the queen's heart. And he has to complete all these trials and all these tests to prove himself worthy of marriage to their queen. And it was really funny. There was a lot of banter, and I personally kind of figured out the plot twist before it happened, but it was still like a really good, like, yeah, that was a really good move. It was really fun. I've only read one other book by this author, Mountain of Dragons and Sacrifice. in the Sacrificed Heart series, and I loved that one. It was really funny. Her writing is just so humorous and lighthearted, and it's just really, oh, it's just fun to read. And there's definitely like high stakes, but it's funny too. So the next book it comes right after that one, and it's called Stolen Midsummer Bride, and it's about this fae named Basil, and he's a librarian in the magical library in the Court of Knowledge. And for reasons that I don't quite remember, his talking pony companion, yes, the pony talks. I know, I was thrown off by that too. I was like, I don't really know how I feel about this, but he was funny enough that I kind of let it go. The talking pony companion, I don't remember his name, pretty much like goads him into going to the human realm to steal a human bride. I think it's because he was kind of like, I want to be married, but I don't want to go to this revelry thing that the other people are having, and because there's lots of tricks and it's really kind of stupid because he thought it was dumb, and he has been once before and he didn't like it. So he goes to the human realm, and unbeknownst to him, there is a girl waiting for him in the little fairy ring, waiting for a fae to come and snatch her because she needs to protect her. She needs money from the fae to protect her siblings from a debt they owe a very evil man. And so she's waiting. And so when he shows up and she's waiting, he's like, what in the world is going on? Why is she waiting? Why does she want to come willingly? And then he takes her home and they marry. He takes her home. He realizes she can't even read. And he is like, I'm a librarian. I work in the magical library. What am I going to do? She can't even read. She doesn't even care about books. Like, she was poor. She doesn't even care. It's really funny. Their relationship was super cute. It was super fun. This was a really short one too. I think it was only like a couple, maybe like not even 200 pages. But it was really fun. It was really cute. I gave it 5 stars. They have to protect the Court of Knowledge from the monsters coming in on Midsummer's Eve. There's lots of nods and references to A Midsummer's Eve. Is that the play by Shakespeare? Is that what it's called? In case you couldn't tell, like, by the title. I didn't realize that until like Puck came, and then like some of the other characters, and then the king and the queen, and I don't remember their names, but they were in there, and it was really funny. I really enjoyed it. It was just a fun, clean fantasy that it was like lighthearted, and it was like, oh, that was fun. I read it in like an afternoon. And then also connected to that series is Bluebeard and the Outlaw by Tara Grace. It is kind of like a spin-off of the Court of Midsummer Mayhem series. It's in a series with various authors, but it's connected to her other series. I really enjoyed this one. It was really fun. It's Robin Hood, a gender-flipped Robin Hood, and Bluebeard retelling, which I didn't even know what Bluebeard was. Apparently, it's just the guy has a blue beard, which in this one it's like is so black that it's almost blue, like, I guess. And then the gender flipped Robin Hood, which means she is a girl. Obviously, Robin Hood's usually a man, so she is stealing from the Sheriff of Nottingham, which is our Bluebeard character, and giving to the poor people. And she has several brothers, and they all like take turns like wearing the hood and robbing and leading robberies, so he doesn't know for sure who is Robin Hood. And she decides that to pull off the ultimate heist, she's an adrenaline junkie, which was kind of hilarious, and kind of also, you're being so stupid, woman, stop it, at the same time. But she decides that I am going to marry the sheriff guy. I don't remember his name. I'm going to marry him, and then I can kill him and take all of his gold for the people as the ultimate revenge, Robin Hood. So of course then they get married, and of course she starts to develop feelings for him, and he seems really evil at first, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and there's ends up to be a little bit of trickery and magic involved, and you have like the famous shooting archery competition that comes with Robin Hood, and it was really fun. I gave it 5 stars. Stolen Midsummer Bride and Bluebeard and the Outlaw are both on KU, and those are both on my short list of books to buy because they were just so much fun to read, and I really want to get physical copies so I can tab them all up and read them over again and have them on my shelves because they were so much fun. Moving on to the audiobooks that I listened to in January. I only have 4. The first one is Chromatic by Ashley Bustamante. I listened to Vivid and Radiant in December. And I like Vivid. Vivid was a reread for me because I've already read that one. Radiant was also a re-listen because I had read it before, but I needed a refresher before I listened to Chromatic. I really like Vivid, and I really dislike Radiant because Ava just drives me so crazy in that series. The series is about color magic, basically. So there's red magic and blue magic, and there's also yellow magic, but yellow magic is outlawed. And so it's like a school setting. And so this girl named Ava, she's a red magic user. She crosses paths with this guy, and he's an outlaw, and his name is Elm, and he is a yellow magic user. And so then she starts to work with him to kind of expose the corrupt government of their country. Then Chromatic is the final book in the Color Theory trilogy, and it is the best one. There was a time I was listening to it and I was kind of on the edge of my seat because I was like, I see no way that they can get out of this alive, and I see no way that this can end well. But it did. She pulled it off. It was like building the tension, building the tension, building the tension. It was like, oh my gosh. And then it was like, okay. I don't know how you did that, but you did, and it was amazing. I really loved Ava and Elm's character arcs in Chromatic. I can't really say too much because I don't want to spoil, but they just matured so much over the course of the 3 books. Even Elm, he matured a lot more, and he had a lot of stuff to work through, and he did, and it was really good. And Ava, she matured a ton because she was okay in the first book, and then the second book she was like really immature and annoying, and then the third book it was like, wow, you got some major character growth, girl, and it was great. The epilogue almost made me cry. It was so good. I loved it so much. It was just satisfying conclusion and resolution. Need I say more? Okay, then we had Harvest of Rubies and Harvest of Gold by Tessa Afshar. I listened to these both and I loved them. I love Tessa Afshar. Her books are always so beautiful, and the setting is always so atmospheric and like sucks you in, makes you feel like you're there. I'm on a mission to collect all of Tessa Afshar's books, so these ones are going on my want to buy list as soon as possible. It was so good. It's about Sarah, and she's a scribe to the Queen of Persia, not Esther. Different one. But basically, she does a favor for the queen, and the queen says, here, to thank you, I'm going to give you in marriage to this, I think he's actually like the king's cousin, and his name is Darius. And she's like, no, I don't want to be married. Like, I don't want to be married. She's Jewish, and the queen is pretty much says, well, too bad you have to be married because I said so, and if you don't, then you're in really big trouble, pretty much. So she marries this guy. They get off to a really bad start on their wedding day because she blew it, pretty much. That's all I can say, but she blew it, and that part made me so mad. I was just like, woman, you need to get yourself together. It's not his fault you have to marry him. And then, and then they're married, and for a very, very logical reason, he despises her. He says, you embarrassed me. You made me a laughing stock in front of the court. I hate you, pretty much. And so he sends her off to his home while he goes with the court to the city that they stay in for the summer. I don't remember what it's called. So while she's at his house, she makes friends with the people that work there, which she's never really had friends before. She works through a lot of stuff. She has a lot of problems with being a people pleaser and wanting to make people happy and just doing anything to feel worth and feel wanted by the people that she wants the validation from. So she goes on a journey with God through that, and then their marriage they resolve things, and then they're like amiable, but then I can't really say, but they're not like all the way there. And then that's kind of where book 1 leaves off. They have a lot of growth, but they're not all the way there yet. And then in the second book, Harvest of Gold, they are sent to Jerusalem with her cousin Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Darius does not want to go. He's like, I have more important things to do than here, and I need to help you. And the king says, no, you're going. This is where I need you to be. And he's like, okay, well, he's really mad about it. And so Sarah and Darius set off to Jerusalem with this caravan, and they're trying to solve a murder plot against the king of Persia along the way. And Sarah's also learning more about her newfound trust in God. Darius is also learning more about Sarah, and they have more problems, and they have to work through those problems. And it's kind of hard because Darius doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't believe in the Persian gods, and he doesn't believe in Sarah's God, and, well, Yahweh, and he doesn't want to. And that just follows them through the rest of their journey. It's so good. I loved them so much. Their story is so beautiful, and I wish there was more of them because they just were so, their story was beautiful. And I just wish there was more because I just wish there's like a whole nother book just about them together after the resolution of Harvest of Gold, after the walls are rebuilt in Jerusalem and everything. It was just beautiful. Tessa Afshar she is an auto-buy author. She is always on point with her spiritual message and her emotional and message and everything. So yes, those were wonderful. Those were both 5 stars. And then the last audiobook I listened to, and the last book we'll talk about in this video, is Mark of the Raven by Morgan L. Bussey. I gave this book 5 stars, and this was a reread for me. I read this book last summer. I listened to it, and I got the other 2 audiobooks on sale that Audible was having, and I decided I needed to listen to this one again before I listened to the other ones to make sure everything was fresh in my mind. And I'm really glad I did, because I forgot how much I loved it. This world where it's set, I don't know what the world is called right now, but there's basically, instead of kingdoms, they're called the great houses. And each great house has a gift. And Celine is part of House Ravenwood, which is the only house, so far as all the other houses know, that doesn't have a gift anymore, that it was wiped out. But they have a secret. Their gift was never wiped out, and her mother and all the women that have come before her have been using their gift to spy on people and to assassinate people secretly within the other great houses. People from the other houses pay the ladies of Ravenwood to do this with their gift. And in the beginning of the book, Celine comes into her gift, and she learns all of these horrible things that her mother has been doing and that her ancestors have been doing, and she is horrified. She is like, this can't be right. This can't be what our gift was meant to be used for. Simultaneously, while her mother is training her to kill with their gift. And then we also meet Damien. He is the Lord of House Maris, which they have the ability to manipulate water. They can raise up water walls from rivers and streams and the sea to kind of keep their borders safe from the Dominia Empire, which is the big empire enemy trying to attack this country and tear these people apart from the inside. So he is struggling with a lot of things with his stuff that has happened to him, stuff that I can't say, but he's struggling. He's having a hard time. And he is simultaneously trying to unite the great houses to fight against the Dominia Empire so nobody gets wiped out like they did last time. And it's really hard because there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of political tension, and people they don't trust each other, they don't want to unite, they just want to fend for themselves. And so he's trying to get people to unite. And so that's when Celine and Damien meet, and the story kind of carries on from there with a bunch of political intrigue, and then both of them simultaneously carrying on together through their journey. This book is a little heavy because there's a lot of spiritual warfare between the light, which is like God in this universe, and then the dark lady. Like Damien, he follows the light, the old ways, that's what they call it. there's only a few of the houses that still follow the old ways or follow the light. And then other houses just don't follow anything. And then Celine's house, the House of Ravenwood, they follow the Dark Lady, which she is like the antagonist to everything the light stands for, obviously. And so there's this spiritual warfare battle just beginning to be shown through, and it plays out more in the second book. But it is and Celine is questioning where the gift has come from, why the Dark Lady is not answering her. Maybe there's something greater than the Dark Lady. There has to be some other reason for their gift other than to murder people and cause all of this disruption. And so she's going through all of these hard questions, and she meets Damien, and she's drawn to him because he follows the light and he's a good person and his soul is pure, and he draws her to the light in a way, even though he knows he's not doing it. So he begins to pull her in. And so she's asking questions and she's wondering and she's searching. And it's so good. For people who aren't fans of spiritual warfare, this is maybe not the best book series, but I loved it. And I just finished listening to the second one, and I'm getting ready to listen to the third one. And I am looking forward to buying this series and having the physical books on my shelves because they're just very, very, the first book is very, very powerful. And the second one is even more so. And I'm really excited to see where the third one leads. So that is all for my January reads. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe and click the notification bell. Thank you so much for following along, and I hope you have an amazing day.